One impulsive punch has left, Will facing consequences that may be much harder to repair than the damage done in the moment. The bold and the beautiful spoilers for Friday, July 24, suggest that Will is still struggling with the fallout from hitting RJ. What happened between the two young men was not treated as a harmless disagreement. Will's actions crossed a line, and the response from the Forresters made that painfully clear. Now Will appears to be feeling the weight of everything that followed. He is described as mopey, which says a lot about where he may be emotionally. The anger that pushed him into the confrontation has passed. What remains is disappointment, frustration, and possibly regret. That is where Dylan enters the story. Dylan steps in to help Will deal with the consequences of recent events. The spoilers do not confirm exactly what she will say or how deeply Will open up to her. Still, her involvement could provide something Will badly needs right now, a calmer perspective. Will acted first. Now he has to think about what his actions cost him. Dylan may be able to help him separate his feelings from his behavior. Will may believe he had reasons to be upset with RJ, but having a reason to feel angry does not automatically justify throwing a punch. That distinction is important. In a family conflict, this emotional, asking questions before reacting could have changed everything. It might have prevented the physical confrontation. It might have protected Will's position. And it might have kept an already tense Spencer-Forrester situation from becoming even more personal. Dylan's role also matters because Will may not be ready to hear criticism from the people directly involved in the feud. Advice from a family member could feel like judgment. Advice from someone slightly removed from the conflict may be easier to accept. But helping Will does not necessarily mean excusing him. The strongest support Dylan can offer may be honesty. Will need someone who can acknowledge that he is hurting without pretending that his reaction was harmless. Sympathy and accountability can exist at the same time. That balance could define their conversation. Will may be embarrassed by what happened. He may also feel unfairly singled out. After all, violence between the Spencer and Forrester families is hardly new. The older generation has repeatedly allowed anger, jealousy, and rivalry to turn physical. That history makes Will's punishment especially complicated. Ridge previously punched Bill. Ridge apparently believed that confrontation was acceptable. Brooke also slapped Katie, and Ridge did not react as though the entire family order had collapsed. Yet when Will hit RJ, the response was immediate and severe. Will needed to be fired. That contrast raises an uncomfortable question. Are the Forresters protecting a standard, or are they protecting one of their own? Will should still be held responsible for hitting RJ. The fact that older family members behaved badly in the past does not make his actions right. However, accountability becomes difficult to respect when it appears to be applied differently depending on who threw the punch and who received it. That is the hypocrisy hanging over this entire storyline. When Ridge hits Bill, it can be treated as another explosion in their long rivalry. When Brooke slaps Katie, it can be dismissed as a heated emotional moment. But when Will strikes RJ, Will's future suddenly becomes the price. For viewers, that double standard may be almost as important as the original confrontation. The younger generation is being pulled into a family war that existed long before they had any part in it. Will and RJ are not simply two young men who lost control during an argument. They also represent the Spencers and the Forresters. That makes every disagreement larger. Every insult carries family history. Every emotional reaction becomes a statement of loyalty. And every mistake threatens to restart a feud that never truly disappears. Will now has to decide what he learns from this experience. He can focus only on how unfair the consequences feel, or he can recognize that his anger gave other people the power to control what happened next. Dylan's support could help him reach that understanding. She cannot erase the punch. She cannot reverse the fallout. But she may help Will see that his next choice matters more than the mistake he has already made. The danger is that resentment could keep him trapped. If Will believes the Forresters will always see him as the problem because he is a Spencer, he may become even more defensive. And if the Forresters refuse to acknowledge their own history of impulsive violence, the conflict will continue to feel one-sided. That is why this moment is bigger than Will feeling sorry for himself. It is about whether he can respond to punishment with maturity. It is also about whether the adults judging him are willing to examine their own behavior. And while Dylan tries to help Will move forward, another conversation may force the older generation to confront a very different version of the past. Katie and Eric are set to discuss past actions, and this conversation could reopen wounds that were never as simple as either family wanted to believe. The spoilers do not reveal every detail of what they will discuss. They also do not confirm how Eric will describe the history between them, but there is a clear concern that Katie could be portrayed as the person responsible for everything that went wrong. That possibility is troubling. Katie should not be expected to accept a rewritten version of events simply because enough time has passed. History does not become more accurate when the most powerful person in the conversation tells it with confidence. If Eric looks back on the past, then Katie deserves the same opportunity. She deserves to explain how those events affected her. She deserves to challenge any version that minimizes her pain. And she deserves to reject the idea that one person alone should carry the blame for a complicated family conflict. This is where the episode's two storylines connect emotionally. Will is being forced to face what he did. Katie may be forced to defend what she did. Both characters are confronting the way the Forrester family defines guilt, loyalty, and acceptable behavior. Eric is a central figure in the Forrester family. His words carry authority. When he offers his interpretation of past actions, that interpretation can easily become the version everyone else is expected to accept. But Katie is not powerless in that conversation. She has her own memories. She has her own emotional truths. And she has every reason to speak up if Eric's version places all responsibility on her while ignoring the choices made by others. The scene does not need shouting or a shocking revelation to feel tense. Sometimes the most painful conflict comes from two people calmly remembering the same history in completely different ways. Eric may believe he is explaining his position. Katie may feel that he is erasing hers. That difference could turn a reflective conversation into an emotional confrontation without either character taking any dramatic new action. It also reflects the larger Spencer-Forrester problem. These families do not simply disagree about what is happening now, they disagree about what happened before. Each side carries its own version of past betrayals, past insults, and past mistakes. That makes reconciliation difficult. People can apologize for an action. It is much harder to move forward when they cannot even agree on what the action meant. The situation with Will and RJ proves that the old rivalry is still shaping the present. Will's punch was his own decision, but the reaction to it cannot be separated from the family names involved. Had Will and RJ belonged to families without years of tension, the situation might still have been serious. But because one is connected to the Spencers and the other to the Forresters, the conflict immediately carries additional meaning. It becomes Spencer against Forrester again. The adults may claim that they want the younger generation to make better choices, yet their own history keeps creating the atmosphere in which these confrontations happen. Ridge's past behavior toward Bill cannot simply be ignored while Will is condemned. Brooke slapping Katie cannot be treated as acceptable while Will's punch is presented as proof that he alone is dangerous or unworthy. Again, this does not clear Will of responsibility. It exposes the need for consistent responsibility. A family cannot teach self-control while celebrating its own moments of aggression. It cannot demand respect while refusing to examine the ways it has humiliated or attacked others. That is the handbook these families seem to need. Not simply a warning that Forresters and Spencers should never mix, but a set of rules that applies to everyone. Ask before assuming. Think before striking. Do not use family loyalty as permission to mistreat someone. And do not demand accountability from the younger generation while protecting the older generation from the same standard. Will's conversation with Dylan may be the first step toward personal growth. He has to understand that feeling angry does not remove his responsibility for what he did. Katie's conversation with Eric may represent the other side of accountability. She must not allow someone else to define the past in a way that unfairly turns her into the villain. Together, these spoilers appear to examine how blame is assigned inside powerful families. The person with the loudest voice is not always the person with the complete truth. The person receiving the harshest punishment is not always the only one who has behaved badly. And the person asking for understanding must also be willing to accept responsibility. Friday's episode may not end the Spencer-Forrester feud. Nothing in these spoilers suggests that such a long conflict will suddenly disappear, but it may expose why the rivalry continues. The families remember their own pain clearly. They are less willing to remember the pain they caused. Will is now living with the consequences of one reckless moment. Dylan may help him see that he must respond differently the next time anger takes control. Katie, meanwhile, may need to stand firm as Eric looks back on their shared history. The conversation could become a test of whether the past will be honestly examined or conveniently rewritten. And hovering over everything is the uncomfortable hypocrisy surrounding Ridge, Bill, Brooke, Katie, Will, and RJ. Who is allowed to lose control? Who is punished for it? And who gets to decide which act of violence is understandable and which one deserves lasting consequences? Will may have thrown the punch, but the older generation created the family conflict surrounding it. So do you believe Will's punishment was fair, or are the Forresters holding him to a standard they have never followed themselves? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe for daily The Bold and the beautiful spoilers, recaps and story updates.